We are Team Books. My name's Jordan Sweat.
I'm Olivia Ivy.
I'm Courtney Browning.
And I'm Tyler Harrington. So our topic was topic number 4. And our first question is, how do we translate the curriculum into leading questions? Leading questions should be open-ended questions that require students to take what you give them in the lecture and be able to have the tools to answer those questions. So any thoughts on how to translate them?
Open-ended questions would be a good way to start.
Right, you don't need to expect regurgitation of something that you taught them. You need to ask questions that will enable their critical thinking skills. For example, instead of asking, who was Thomas Jefferson, maybe you could ask, why was Thomas Jefferson important to America and how did he help shape the nation?
That also, going off what she said, talking about questions, instead of them being just like basic questions that each student thinks differently and it becomes individualistic, and that's how you could incorporate the curriculum into these driving questions.
And the book made a good example of this in chapter 3, where it talks about that your students are not test scores, they're not curriculum, they're individuals. So every student's going to have a different idea, different basis or understanding for whatever topic you're discussing. May it be based on how they were raised, their religious beliefs, or whatever. Any topic you bring up, they're going to have a specific way of already attacking it before you ever teach it to them. When you come to sciences and get to biology, you may bring up evolution. And you have to understand that this critical thinking is going to actually get them thinking based on what they know. But they have to also challenge them to think past what they know. So you have students that are going to be coming into these classes with the basic knowledge already. And our job with the leading questions is to take them from that basic understanding, and like Courtney said, think about the deeper thinking, the more critical thinking. And Olivia said with the other questions, you have to make it challenging for the students. Because if you have an easy question, you're just basically asking them to tell you what you just told them.
Yeah, I think it's important that when you open these questions, that as each student they do have different backgrounds, that you need to be sure to keep an open mind when it comes to them answering the questions. Because when you leave it open-ended, you could get a number of responses.
Right, and then I'll kind of also help you gauge where the student is, where their mind is, and if they're even grasping the concept. It's much better than just asking a closed-ended question where you know that they really don't have to know what they're talking about.
And the last part of this, the leading question it's based on what you're teaching that day. So it's also key to make sure when you ask the question that you're not trying to ask a question about something that you taught 3 weeks ago or something that you're not going to teach for the next week and a half. That it's based on what you're going to be telling them that day, and that you'll be able to gauge their knowledge on it that exact day at the end of the class period.
For our second question, we were asked, how can we focus on the appropriate verbs to use?
And the book states this as the verbs are the skills that are mandated in the curriculum, and that most curricula are becoming more and more skill-based.
Using the specific verbs are dependent upon the subject that's being taught. For example, in a science classroom, there's a lot of memorization, and there's not much dialect that has to be spoken versus having, like, in a history classroom, like when it comes to memorizing the periodic table, we're going to use the frequent decision making, because each student is required to answer a question. They all have to, because there's not going to be more than 110 kids in one classroom, you need to ask the questions. They can all answer one, so therefore you always get an answer, and they apply what they've learned, because there is so much to learn.
And then as far as history or even a literature or English course, you're going to focus more on the Socratic method of questioning, because you have to think about a dialect. You have to get your students engaged, because there is memorizing, but you're not really going to learn much in history from memorization. If you don't understand what happened and why it happened, it's just going to go out the window as soon as you leave the classroom, or as soon as you're done with that class.
The Socratic method is also a type of open-ended questions, which we talked about in our first slide. It makes the person being questioned recognize logical contradictions in his or our own positions, and that forced the person to reconsider his or her own position on the topic at hand.
Right. And the Socratic approach to teaching is based on the practice of disciplined, rigorous, thoughtful dialogue. And that's really crucial in, say, a history or an English classroom. Like Tyler said, you don't just want to tell them information and expect it to get the same information back. You want to know that they're thinking about the topic at hand. You want them to be able to almost place themselves within that story and use their critical thinking skills and be able to have an intelligent conversation about it.
It's important just to gauge your question and your verbs based on the class you're teaching. Every class will have a different way of doing this, especially based on subject-based matter.
The final question we were asked were, how do we choose the appropriate nouns or tools for student use, and why is this necessary and appropriate to do?
As we discussed on our other slide, it's all subject-based and it adheres to your specific subject. One example of these tools would be an audio book, which would be used in the history classroom per se. Those are made available to you through PCs, laptops, Macintosh, readily available to use, probably provided by your school.
And in a science classroom, if the school was able to, afford it, you could use a 3D printer. Like if you were studying the human body, then you could print out certain organs that are related to the organ system that you're discussing.
And like a 3D printer for science, you have a lot of students that would be squeamish around a real heart or real organs or having to see the blood still on it. The fact that you're able to use a 3D printer, it's all made right there, so they can understand that they can see all the workings of the organ itself without having to touch a real organ. And then going back to audiobook and other things for history, using things like audible.com, where you can get free audio subscriptions they can have on their phone. They can listen to it while they're driving on the road, put their headphones in while their parents are driving down. It gets them out of read because most students don't even use books anymore. Everything's electronic. You have using virtual reality. There's a lot of video games that allow you to create civilizations. So you could have students over the course of 3 weeks create a complete civilization and have it thriving. You can set certain standards on how it's supposed to be thriving. As far as virtual reality, you can use it for science, biology. Have dissections also for the squeamish students. But like they said, it's based on subject matter. Not every class is going to be different. Some things will carry over, like virtual reality. But audiobooks really wouldn't be a vital thing for science, do you think?
I don't think so, because in science, you're more hands-on, and the use of a 3D printer or being able to dissect something, mostly in science, it's something that you can see and you can hold and to be able to understand that concept. Because most students are visual learners in a science classroom, so if you make them read and read and read or listen to something, it's not going to click with them unless it's right there in front of them.
And we'd like to thank you for joining Team Books for our discussion of topic number 4.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Stay tuned for the bloopers.
Any ideas on how to translate these?
Pause.
Crap. Crap.
Our topic is number 4. And that was Don't videotape me.
I just threw on your face. I'm sorry. Oh.
Okay.
Oh, God. I lost that.
What?
Right?
Yes.
Crap.
Why'd you say crap? You could have just kept going. You could have just kept going from there and just start.
Use those.
In a science... What?
Might have to pause that one.
Stay tuned for the bloopers.
It feels so stupid introducing a blooper reel. still going?
Yep.
Yep.
Just
Hey,
still
put
go.
that in too.
Still,
Put that in
let's
too.
You missed the
And
button.
there we go.
You
Oh,
missed the
no, we
button.
don't.
It's a click. Oh gosh. I can see that.
Is this from the beginning?
No, this is from me right now. It's recording.
Shine bright like a diamond.
Shine bright like a diamond.
Shine bright like a diamond.